Oh my god. Later that night, I wasn't expecting that art. Oh my god. Heisuke and Sanon came to visit Hijikata-san. As members of the Fury Corps, they had been resting when we arrived in the afternoon.
今日はいつもより早く目が覚めましたよ。君が期待したおかげで場内が騒がしかったもので。
かなりの大怪我だったんだろう。こんなに早く合流できるなんて思わなかったぜ。
こう戦続きじゃいつまでも休んでられねえだろうが。
He sounded calm and relaxed enough, but I knew he wasn't that way on the inside. I'd felt depressed ever since we learned that Kondo-san passed away. However, I knew what I felt was nothing compared to what Hijikata-san must have felt.
ではそろそろおいとましましょうか。我々の仕事は夜半から始まりますので。
Heisuke nodded. They were halfway to the door when Hijikata-san spoke.
ああ、ヘイスケ、悪いが斎藤を呼んできてくれるか。
はじめくん、わかった、呼んでくる。けど土方さんここに着いたばっかりなんだし、今夜ぐらいはゆっくり休んでくれよな。
He gave Hijikata-san a quick grin, then turned and left. With Heisuke and Sanon-san gone, the room fell into a somewhat awkward silence. Hijikata-san had told me to leave, but it seemed unlikely that he would start talking to me either. No. I'd opened my mouth to speak in a desperate attempt to break the silence. Then the door slid open, and Saito stepped in.
俺にご用だと伺いましたが、何か。
Without even waiting for him to sit, Hijikata-san began to speak.
斎藤、今後の戦いは俺が前線で指揮を取る。
What? I gulped. That came out of nowhere. If we were to be fighting on the front line, the violence would be intense. Hijikata-san still hadn't fully healed. He was healthy enough to put himself in that... Was he healthy enough to put himself in that kind of danger?
討ち死になさるおつもりですか。
みすみす殺されてやるつもりはねえよ。今まではお前が前線に出てたんだろう。副長の俺がその役目を肩代わりするのは当然だろうが。
The chief heading to the front line would raise morale. That was certain, but Hijikata-san was the core of the Shinsengumi. If he died, then the Shinsengumi would collapse.
そのお言葉には一理あると思います。ですが、俺の代わりを務めるとおっしゃるのであれば。
The air suddenly felt thick as Saito's hand fell to his sword.
俺を倒してから向かってください。俺より劣る腕前であれば、前線へ向かっても犬死にするだけですから。
Saito?
言うようになったじゃねえか。
His mouth twisted into a grin as his sword slid from its scabbard. Hijikata-san, not you too! Please stop this. You're friends. You shouldn't be fighting each other. Hijikata-san turned his eyes to me, and they were as cold as ice.
お前は口を挟むな。黙ってみてろ。
Hijikata-san. He wasn't going to listen to me, that much was clear. All I could do was be silent and watch. Seconds lingered as they remained unmoving. Then they both exploded into motion at the same time. Swords collided. They struggled for a moment, swords grinding until...
なんだと
Hijikata-san was thrown back to sprawl across the floor. Even only partially healed, he still had far greater strength than a human, and he wasn't the sort of person who would have gone easy on Saito.
傷も癒え切らぬ状況で生き残れるほど合図は甘い場所ではありません。
My head is on my mouth! Saito! I literally slapped my hand across my mouth when I saw Saito. What? Saito. The red eyes, the white hair. There was no doubt that Saito-san was a fury. Did you drink the water of life?
気遣いは不要。これは俺自身が選択した結果だ。
I didn't know what to say. The simple fact that Saito-san had become a fury said more about the battles he'd been fighting than words ever could.
自ら激戦地で指揮を取りたいというお心は理解できているつもりです。だからこそ行かせるわけにはいかない。
There was a calm finality to Saito-san's voice as he slid his sword back into its scabbard.
戦いの最中に身を置いていれば苦しみを忘れられるかもしれない。しかし忘れてもらっては困ります。現実から目を背けるべき時ではありません。
Hijikata-san slowly put his own sword away, then stood silently, looking into Saito-san's eyes.
俺が新選組の副長だからか。
近藤局長亡き今、新選組を滑る人だからです。
After hearing Saito-san's unwavering response, Hijikata-san sighed.
前線での戦いは俺たちに任せてください。土方さんは城にとどまって作戦の指揮を。
分かった。合図の前線指揮はお前に任せるよ。少なくとも俺の傷が癒えるまでは。
ありがとうございます。
He was honest when he thanked him. Then he turned to face me. I...
土方さんを頼む。傷が癒えるまで目を離さないでくれ。
I nodded and gave Saito-san what I hoped was a reassuring smile. He inclined his head to me, turned to Hijikata-san to bow, and then left. I quietly let out a sigh of relief. As soon as he was gone, Hijikata-san's face darkened and his brows drooped together.
やれ。目付け役をつけなきゃならねえほど俺を信用できねえってことか。
He's just worried about you. That's all. I didn't really know how effective of a babysitter I could be, but Saito-san had put his trust in me. I had to at least give it my best shot. I know you're anxious to get back into battle, but you need to rest, all right? He gave a bitter laugh, then suddenly stopped.
No.
Yo, it's round 4 time. It is time for round 4. He clapped a hand to his stomach in pain. Hijikata-san. He started to shake, and his hair and eyes changed color. The bloodlust had taken hold of him, and he began to moan in pain. If this continued, anyone could see him at any time. Hijikata-san, come into this room. I managed to carry Hijikata-san, writhing in pain, to the room next door. But what was I to do now? Give him blood. Hijikata-san. I moved towards him, and I saw in his eyes that he already understood. I tugged at my collar, loosening it like I'd done before. He bent toward me, and I felt a sharp pain in my neck. I stayed as still as I could. His hot breath panted across my neck, but as he drank it slowly, he began to calm. I felt relief wash over me. If I could take away even a little of his pain like this, then this was the right way to do it. Eventually, he pulled back. There was pain on his face, but not from the bloodlust.
とどまり続けるものじゃねえよな。
His mouth twitched up into a sour half smile.
いつまでも続けられることじゃねえよ。お前も俺もこの戦いも他のすべてもだ。
Hijikata-san? His eyes were distant and he didn't even seem to hear me. I couldn't find the words to describe it, but something felt strange, wrong. A car went beep. 1868 September. Oh. By the time Hijikata-san's injuries had fully healed, it was nearly mid-August. Battles still raged across the Aizu domain, but the advantage was slowly moving to the Imperial Army. Our troops were being driven into a corner. Then one day, Shimada burst into the room, gasping for breath.
大鳥さんからの伝令が届きました。曰く仙台にて再起をかけると。
仙台藩というと奥羽越列藩同盟の盟主とされる藩ですね。
Northern Alliance, the military and political coalition between the Mutsu, Dewa, and Echigo domains, formed with the intent of fighting against the Empire of Japan. It was led by the Sendai domain. In other words, they were all allies to the Aizu, as well as the troops loyal to the former shogunate. Unfortunately, it was only a matter of time before the Aizu men on the front lines fell to the Imperial Army.
でも合図がいつ落ちるかわからないこの状況でか。
だからこそだろう。分散したまま兵力を削られるよりは一発逆転にかける方が勝ち目もある。大鳥さんも随分と派手なことを思いついたもんだな。
Excitement glittered in Hijikata-san's eyes. Apparently, he approved of Otori's plan. I hadn't seen Hijikata-san this excited in a while, and the others in the room picked up on this energy.
旧幕府海軍もすでに江戸を脱走し、海路にて北上しているとのことです。
では私が先行して仙台に向かいましょう。本隊が到着するまでに地盤を固めておきますよ。
You? True, someone had to go first, at the very least to establish a base for the Shinsengumi. We'd also likely need to pay our respects to the leaders of the Northern Alliance. It just seems a little dangerous to have our representative be someone from the Fury Corps.
仙台は私のふるさとですからつてがあります。内情を探るにしても 私が適任でしょう。少々気になることもありますしね。
Bothering you? He nodded and smiled, but it seemed that was all he'd tell me. What could be bothering him? I had a very bad feeling.
けど三男さん死んだことになってるだろ。今さら出て行っても混乱を招くんじゃねえか。
Yeah.
それくらいどうとでもごまかせますよ。
そう言われますと、やはり三男さんが適任かもしれません。
羅刹は先行部隊には向かねえよ。昼間に移動できねえんだからな。
昼に活動するのは手間ですが、できないわけではありません。今は正念場ですからね。多少の無理なら喜んでさせていただきますよ。
What are you up to? I didn't doubt his ability to do what he said, but I did question the validity of his motives. I had a very bad feeling. Hijikata-san and Sanan-san stared at one another silently.
その伝令にはまだ続きがありましてね。大鳥さんは伝習隊を率いてボナリ峠に向かい、新政府軍の進軍を食い止めるつもりのようです。味方の兵を仙台に移動するため猶予を作るおつもりなのでしょう
ボナリ峠って今の最前線だよな。大鳥って人の考えもわからなくはねえけど、時間稼ぎなんて言うほど簡単じゃねえだろ。
確かに今の新政府軍との戦力差を考えると。
大鳥さんたちに生還してもらうためにはボナリ峠に援軍を出す必要がある。
その案には賛成できません。我々が勝利をつかむためには無傷のまま仙台へたどり着く必要があります。
それはつまり会津藩、今まで我々を庇護してくださった会津公を見捨てるということですか。
ここで共倒れになってしまっては元も子もありませんよ。
I was told that the Shinsengumi owed much of their survival and their success to the Aizu domain. However, for Sanan to be victorious in Sendai, then the Shinsengumi would have to leave. All of us. It was not an easy decision to make. Hijikata was visibly disturbed at having to decide. However, it was Saito who shot a glance at everyone, seemingly having made up his mind on the matter.
俺が会津に残ります。
What?
上洛したばかりの頃、何のつてもなかった我々を預かり、後ろ盾となってくださったのは会津藩です。会津公の庇護なくして今の新選組はありませんでした。ですから俺は最後までここで戦いたい。ボナリ峠には俺が向かいます。土方さんたちはこのまま仙台へ向かってください。
斎藤、お前。
では私も出立の準備を整えましょう。善は急げと言いますからね。
Before giving Hijikata-san a chance to reply, he stood and left the room. Heisuke didn't seem particularly happy about how things had turned out, but after a moment of furious thought, he stood up as well.
俺も三男さんと一緒に行く。あの人から目を離すのは不安だしな。
そうしてくれると助かる。
Be careful, Heisuke.
大丈夫、任せとけって。
He gave me a smile and winked, and then dashed out the door after Sanan-san. Every time I see Heisuke, he just brings me joy. God!
島田、伝令の準備をしておいてくれ。大鳥さんと会津藩に新選組の決定を伝える。
わかりました。早急に用意を整えます。
He bowed and left. Saito turned once again to face Hijikata-san. Whether or not he'd been waiting until the room emptied to do so, I wasn't sure.
土方さんは何としてでも生き残ってください。
どうした、やぶから棒に。
新選組は近藤さんや土方さんが信じて築き上げてきた武士の道そのものです。
Even when they were slandered and despised by the people of Kyoto, and when the shogunate began to capitulate to the imperial army, they had never bent, never compromised what they stood for.
新選組が掲げる誠の旗は今や侍たちの拠り所になっています。新選組は武士を導く者、義の道しるべです。
And every warrior's soul was honor, dedication, and loyalty. And the Shinsengumi, those values were made fresh. There could be no retreat. Saito and Hijikata-san looked at one another silently.
俺は新選組を作り上げた土方さんにこそ道しるべを担い続ける義務があると考えています。
簡単に言ってくれるじゃねえか。
Then, Hijikata-san gave his usual thin-lipped smile and spoke in a very peaceful manner.
お前に約束してやるよ。俺は新選組の行く末を見届ける。
Saito-san bowed.
ありがとうございます。
He looked up, and Saito-san eventually turned silently towards me.
土方さんを頼む。
So few words, but with such great emotion behind them. We'll be fine. I nodded. What do we say? He wouldn't die even if you killed him. After all, I don't think Hijikata-san could die even if someone killed him. Saito's eyes widened in surprise. I've seen him on the verge of death lots of times, but he always pulls through. Don't worry about him. He'll fight with the Shinsengumi forever. So... I set my jaw and looked Saito-san straight in the eye. Please don't die, Saito-san. The battle at Bonari Pass was sure to be an intense one. Many men would lose their lives. However, there is a tremendous difference between going into battle prepared to die and going into battle expecting to die.
殺しても死なねえとは随分な言い草じゃねえか。俺の心配をしてる暇があるなら、お前ももう少し自分のことを心配しろ。
He said it as a joke, but there was no mistaking the underlying sincerity. He went along with my statement after knowing my intentions.
俺も簡単には死ねません。掲げた新選組の名にかけて。
He turned his eyes to me. He gave me a peaceful gaze.
気遣いに感謝を。